Today, we're going to take a look at passage 1 from SAT practice test number 2. I will analyze each question and explain what makes the right answers absolutely correct and the wrong ones clearly incorrect. The goal is for you to see how information and the lack of information in the text link to the answer choices. So let's dive into the passage. So the passage is from some dude right there. It's called The Professor, and it was originally published in 1857. Well, first thing, 1857, that was quite a while back, right? So don't worry about all the formal vocabulary in this. There's definitely something that you will not understand, and that's totally fine because for the SAT, you don't need to understand the definition of each word exactly, and mostly the context of the word will make its meaning quite clear. So first, no one likes to acknowledge that he has made a mistake in the choice of his profession. Okay, so something about jobs and maybe something about how people don't like the job that they want. Okay, allowed himself to cry out, "I am baffled," and submits to floated passively back to land. So this is like a surrender, right? For the first week of my residence at X, so occupation irksome. So this is him trying to say that he doesn't really enjoy his job. So his job is dry and tedious. Alright, let's underline some of this. Irksome. Oh shoot, that was not good. Irksome. Okay, let me underline that again. Sorry about that. There we go. And dry and tedious. But that had been all. Okay, nuisance. So another thing he doesn't like. Not gonna underline it. Justify myself. So here's the motivation. So getting his living and justification, becoming a tradesman. I should have endured. So something he should have done apparently, and then long for liberty and should have again. So there are two should haves. We're not really gonna worry about it too much. Okay, so something about more bad stuff: closeness, smoke, monotony, Pantene. So he wants fresher scenes. Okay. Okay, household gods, don't worry about it. Imagination, and antipathy. Okay, spraying up between myself and my employer, so there's some hate between him and his boss. Okay, deeper roots excluding sunshine of life, so that's something that he is deprived of by his boss apparently. Okay, and slimy. Oh wow, the plant growing in humid darkness out of the slimy walls of a well. That sounds terrible. Well, anyway, so that's really how we can look at the passage. Just rough sketches, rough scan throughout. We just have to have an idea of what he's talking about. Not every word is important. Antipathy is the only word that can express the feeling. So that word again, antipathy, feelings. So this is his boss, right? I go to my southern accent. So something annoys him, irritated him, dislike, envy. So all these are kind of like a list of stuff that his boss doesn't like about him. So if he is anything inferior to him, so if the narrator is anything worse than the boss, then the boss wouldn't hate him as much. Okay, so here's something about the boss thinks the narrator is smarter than him, and that's why he's angry. If he is able to embarrass the narrator, then the boss would, feel a little bit better about himself. Don't do that, kids. That's called bullying. Okay, so, but the narrator is actually guarded by three faculties: caution, tact, and observation. And as so, the boss malignity, malignity. So that's like threats, dark intentions. But they never get to, they never confuse the lynx eye of these, my natural sentinels. So that's like his three big thing. He is very careful, he is tactful, he's observant. So that's why the boss, never is never able to embarrass the narrator. Okay, so here's like a metaphor. So the boss is like an evil snake, and the narrator is like a lynx, yada yada yada. I have received, so here is kind of like wages, hard and so he works very hard, but he doesn't get paid very much apparently. Here's something long ceased to regard, so maybe this is something about how he felt about his boss before as a brother, probably at the start. As hard grinding master. Thought so before. Maybe he thought the brother, the boss was a nice person, and now he doesn't. But not really mentioned. Probably not gonna be a question, but it's possible. Thoughts not varied but strong. Occupy. So there's a voice inside his head that says, "Your life is intolerable. What can you do to alter it? Walk fast." To logging, so he's walking home, right? And then he's thinking to himself if his fire will be out, and it is out. There we go. So we finished the passage. As you can see, that was a really rough read, but that's generally it. Sometimes it's better to just get a rough idea of what the passage is about than just reading every single word of it, because let's be honest, if you read every single word, you're not going to always memorize everything, and you're going to have to come back later anyways, right? Okay, let's think. So what's really the first passage about? So the first passage is a generalization at the start. Let's write general. Bad spelling. General. And then we have something about his dislike of the job. So here's something, some reasons why, some whys. And then we have something he should have done. Not that important, I would say. Just more complaints, to be honest. Here's a hint to bad relationship with his boss. I'm not going to write that down because we're going to talk about that right here. So these are boss, why boss hates him. Okay, and then here the last part is a pretty typical conclusion. We just have him, walking to his home. Nothing, that stands out in this paragraph. So that was maybe about, I don't know, maybe 6 minutes, 7 minutes, with me talking as well. And so if you do it on your own, maybe 5 minutes, right? That's probably doable. Let's just go into the question, and if we need more information, we'll go back to the passage, right? Number one, which choice best? Oh, I hate that word best. Only one correct answer. How can there be a best answer if there's only one correct answer? Which choice summarizes the passage? Okay, so a summary is, like a collapsed version of the passage. So it's going to have to incorporate stuff from basically the whole passage, right? The correct answer needs to have all of the elements. Let's look at A. A character describes his dislike. Let's underline dislike for his new job and considers the reasons why. So there are two big things for answer choice A, right? Does he dislike his job? And are there reasons shown in the passage? Well, I think it's pretty obvious that he dislikes his new job, right? There are many reasons why over here, he calls his occupation, which is, a synonym for job, irksome. Irksome, as you know, is annoying. And if you're annoyed, then there's a good chance you don't like it. It's a dry and tedious task. It's boring, right? And he finds his job a nuisance. That just there's a few examples of how he dislikes his job. So that's kind of like reasons why, and also it shows dislike. If you want even more reasons, we could talk about all the way over here with his boss. The bad relationship between his boss and himself, about how his boss is always trying to sabotage his worker. I don't know what kind of boss would do that, cuts into profits, but whatever. So these are just multiple reasons why. I think we already talked about maybe 3 or 4 reasons why. So this is a very good choice. We're gonna leave it open. Let's look at B. 2 characters employed in the same office becoming increasingly competitive. So what are the 2 characters here? That's probably gonna be the main character and his boss, right? Because those are the 2 characters that are discussed the most in the passage. And then we need to talk about increasingly competitive. Now, what does it mean to be competitive? I like to think of it as 2 racers, racing towards the same goal. And to be competitive, usually the word is used to describe a relationship, a contest between two people at the same level. Now that doesn't mean that the 2 person are equally skilled, just that they're roughly equally skilled. They're at the same level. I mean, that's what a competition is really. And then increasingly competitive is you have to start the passage have to tell you something about the start of the competition. At the end of the competition, are they becoming more and more competitive? Well, here's the thing. One of these character is a boss and the other is his worker. Now really is no competition between the boss and the worker. They're on the same side technically, and they're not on the same level either. So they're not in the context of the SAT. They would not be described as being competitive. They're working towards the same goal, and there is no indication that they're becoming more and more competitive, which is why B has to be a wrong answer, right? Because they're not on the same level. One of them is a boss, the other is his worker, and they're in the same company, they're doing the same business. A young man regrets privately a choice. So we gotta talk about privately a choice, and what choice would that be? Well, that's gonna be the choice of profession, right? The only time we see a choice is right here, I believe. Something about choice here. Yes, choice of his profession. Let's go back, and then it says, what about the choice of profession? Oh, something that he regrets, and that is also something he defends in public. Well, does he regret his job? Well, he does hate his job, so I would say there's a good chance that he regrets his job. Now, does he defend his job in public? Well, that's the iffy part, because we're never shown any of his behaviors in public, so we don't know if he defends it. For this choice to be right, there will have to be a sentence in the passage that's like, oh, while other people tell me I should quit my job, I always tell them that I love my job even though I hate it. That's why C is wrong, because such a sentence is absent from the text, right? Okay, D. New employee experiences optimism, then frustration, and then despair. Well, that's going to be 3 elements in that exact same order. Well, let's see if they exist first, right? Optimism. Is there a sentence that's like the employee goes, well, the employee's narrator, narrator goes, oh, well, things look bad right now, I think it will go great in the future. That's not in the passage. He never talks about his view on the future, really. He never has really much of a positive view in this either. And then frustration. Well, I would say that there is some frustration here. He's not that happy with his boss, so maybe there could be some justification. Let's just give it a check. And then there's despair. Well, despair is really not in this passage because he never completely gives up, right? He works hard. He has his cautious tact and observatory is that what he's observation. He's always on the lookout. He never surrenders. He's getting his hard-earned cash. He's not in despair. He's just a bit sad, a bit disappointed maybe, but he is not in despair. So here, of the three elements, two of them are wrong, so that means D is definitely wrong. And of course, even if just one of these are wrong, the whole thing will be wrong as well. So that only leaves A as the correct answer. Let's go to 2. The main purpose of the opening sentence of the passage is to establish... Okay, hold on. First opening sentence. Let's take a look at the opening sentence. The opening sentence is right here. No man likes to acknowledge that he has made a mistake in the choice of his profession. Every man worthy of the name will roll on. That's a very long first sentence. Okay, so it talks about choosing a profession and how people make mistake, and the people who make the mistake will not admit that they made a mistake until they're completely baffled and just surrenders and then just passively go back to the land, their starting point. Okay, A is the purpose of the sentence to establish the narrator's perspective on controversy. So a perspective is the same thing as an opinion. Well, the text never shows us the narrator's opinion on this matter. He just states it. He doesn't say, "Oh, I agree with this," or something like, "Oh, I don't agree with this." It's just a statement. There's no opinion here, and then controversy is that here in the text? Well, not really, because a controversy is going to have to have two sides, right? And as we discussed before, this first sentence is a generalization. It's like a stereotype. It's not really debatable here. It's not really a controversy. There's no one taking any of the sides. It's just a statement. It's a generalization, and that's why it's not a controversy. There's no debate about it. B, provide context useful in understanding the narrator's emotional state. So context is, the background information or text around it. So we're gonna look to see if in the text that follows it, is there anything about his emotional state, and does the information in this first sentence relate to the information in the later sentences or the greater passage, right? So here, the choice of profession is the focus of this first sentence, the mistake in the choice of profession. And we know the whole passage is about the author, lamenting on his choice. He's saying, he doesn't really like his job, and that relate to making a mistake in his profession. So the context part definitely fits. What does the emotional part fit? Well, he does find his job irksome. If you find something annoying, then that's kind of an emotion. If you find yourself at a task that's dry and tedious and you hate it, that's also an emotion. If you think something is a nuisance, that's also just another emotion. There are many emotions here down the line. I think you can find his hatred of his job as another example of his emotion. His conflict, his hatred of his boss. A lot of stuff that he is emotional about, he is angry about, that he has dislike for. And thus B is a reasonable answer. We're going to keep it open. How about C then? Offer a symbolic representation, well, symbolic, that's pretty fancy to be honest, of Edward Crimsworth's plight. Now, the SAT actually likes to confuse people using, these names. And here, this is a very clear example. Who is Edward Crimsworth? Well, Edward Crimsworth is the narrator's boss. And the first sentence has nothing to do with narrator's boss. It's just meant to confuse you. If it's a symbolic representation of the narrator's plight, then maybe it could be right. But here it's a totally different character. It is completely wrong, and that is why we have to be careful about the subject of the answer, right? D. Contrast the narrator's good intention with his malicious conduct. Well, okay, so two parts, good intention. Do we see any example of, altruism or something like that? Does he donate? Well, no, the passage doesn't really talk about any of the narrator's good intentions. He never mentions like, oh, I want to help people, right? And so that makes this part incorrect. How about his malicious conduct? Is he trying to kill someone? Is he, threatening his boss? Actually, no, that's more like his boss's problem, right? His boss is, a bad person plotting against our narrator, but our narrator never, threatens his boss. He just chills, man. He just chills and make sure he never gets in trouble. What an honest fellow. I would hire this guy instantly. Okay, so that leaves B, the only correct answer. Okay, let's go to 3. During the course of the first passage, the narrator's focus shifts from, so there's going to be a focus shift, pretty obvious, well, pretty straightforward question, right? A collection of past confidence and acknowledgement of present self-doubt. So for this to be right, we gotta have past confidence and present self-doubt. Well, does he have past confidence? I would argue no, because obviously, some people would say that he chose his job, or like, okay, he must have, had confidence in the job. But that's not always true. We don't really know if he's really given much of an option here. This could be the only job he could take. And just because you choose a job doesn't mean that you're confident that it will work out in the long run, right? There are many examples of people switching jobs, and past confidence is just not demonstrated strictly in the text. We have to infer, and that's not good. So let's cross that out for now. Okay. Is there present self-doubt? Well, some people would say that, when you regret your job, you're doubting yourself. But again, that's not true, because let's say you make a mistake in math, just like, in profession. How about 2 plus 2 equals 5? Well, you made a mistake and you realize you made a mistake and you admit that you made a mistake. Does that mean that you're doubting yourself, that you're making a mistake? No, it doesn't really mean anything. Everyone makes mistakes. Just because you made one, it doesn't mean that you have self-doubt, right? Let's cross A out. There's no mentioning of either of those factors. Okay, B. A reflection on his expectations of life as a tradesman to his desire for another job. Again, 2 things we gotta pay attention to. Let's first look at expectations of life. So I remember something about motivation here. Okay, double desire. Okay, so maybe here we get some clue. Okay, getting his living. That kind of relates to the first part. Okay. That part's not that important. So getting his living, well, does that tell us anything about his expectations for life? Well, not really. We don't know how he wants to live, right? Does he want to just get by, or does he want to own an airplane? Actually, yeah, he can't own an airplane. It's 18 something, but you know what I mean. We don't really understand specifically what he wants. There's not much of a demonstration of his expectations of life. So this part is incorrect. Hold up, let me just switch. Yeah, that's a bit better. Okay, a desire for another job. Well, over here, it never really talks about him finding another job. It's mostly about him complaining about his current job, right? And that means this part is also incorrect. So B must be wrong. C. Generalization about job dissatisfaction to the specifics of his own situation. Okay, how convenient. He the actually yeah. So generalization. We already mentioned that. I wrote general here, terribly spelled with that tiny r stuck in there. But still, we already mentioned that the first part is a generalization. Do we know how it ends? Okay, so specifics of his own situation. Well, yes. There's very specific examples of, his relationship with, his boss over here, right? All of these are specific to him. Not everyone has such problems, and I think that's a very clear indication that C is a correct answer, but of course I'm going to just leave it open. Let's not check it for now. Let's go to D, evaluation of factors that are making him unhappy, and then we have to find identification of alternatives. Well, he does talk about the factors that make him unhappy, but he does not talk about anything about identification of alternatives. He's not saying, okay, here's another reason, There's just not that much he's considering it here. He's just stating his present situation and not looking at any alternatives, which is why D is incorrect. Part of a correct answer does not make the answer completely correct, right? Any part of a wrong answer, any wrong will make answer choice completely wrong, is what I meant to say. Okay, 4. The references to shade and darkness at the end of the first paragraph mainly have which effect? Okay, so let's see where that is. Okay, here. So shade and darkness. Can I find darkness? Find shade. No. Oh well. So where is darkness? Oh well. My eyesight is failing me. So what kind of effect does it have? Does it evoke a sense of dismay? Well, I would say here that it does show a sense of dismay because it's talking about how his relationship with his boss is so terrible. We have images of, sucking the sunshine of life out of you and, human darkness, and that's all. Oh, there we go, found darkness. Of the humid darkness. That's really some pretty terrible stuff, and I would say that is a sense of dismay, right? Because you don't want to be in such a situation. So let's keep A open. B, they reflect on the narrator's sinister thoughts. Well, sinister thoughts, similar to before, with the malicious conduct, is not indicated in the passage at all. We have no indication that the narrator is, plotting something against his boss. If anything, his boss is the evil one here, right? So B is incorrect. C, they capture the narrator's fear of confinement. Some people would like to argue that, being a plant trapped in the slimy walls of a well is terrible, and I agree with that. But that does not indicate anything about fear of confinement, right? Because that is, at the end of the day, just a metaphor. Actually, that's a simile. My bad. The simile. The author never says the narrator has a direct fear of anything. You could not like to grow in a slimy wall, but that does not mean that you feel contained, right? Because a well could be a very, very, very big well, right? There's no indication of anything. that he actually has a fear of confinement, right? So that means we have to eliminate this answer choice. C. Okay, D. They reveal the narrator's longing for rest. Well, while the narrator does not like his job, that doesn't mean that he's tired, right? And there's no indication of that anywhere in the passage, and thus we will have to eliminate D as well, and that just leaves A to be the correct answer. Let's move on to number 5. The passage indicates that Edward Crimsworth, so who is that? That is the boss. That is a boss. Behavior was mainly caused by his impatience with the narrator's high spirits. Well, what does high spirits mean? First of all, it's like, oh, you're very, happy, and stuff like that. But is that mentioned anywhere in the passage? Well, we know that there is some kind of a list down here, over here, why his boss hates him. I even labeled it. That. There's nothing in this list that would suggest that the boss hates the narrator's happiness, because the narrator is not happy, right? He's not happy here. So how can the boss be angry about his happiness if he's not happy in the first place? I don't know why I can't write that Y. Oh, okay, I'm writing off the page. Oh well. Let's just cross A off. Sorry for that disgusting Y. But B, scorn of the narrator's humble background. Let's go take a look at that. Well, no mentioning of anything about his humble background. Actually, some people like to argue, having an accent is a humble background, but that's not really mentioned here in the passage, and we can't just assume anything. There is no indication that he has a humble background, and we will cross B off. C. Indignation at the narrator's rash actions. Well, this is a straight up contradiction, right? We know that the narrator has extreme caution. He's very tactful, he's very observant. And this guy would make a great driver if there were cars back then. But so that means that he does not make any rash actions, and thus there can be no indignation. So C must be wrong. And at this point, we already know that D is right, but we're going to look at it anyways. So jealousy of the narrator's apparent superiority. Well, actually, yes, we do get some indication of jealousy and apparent superiority, right? The narrator says that his degree of education irritated the boss, and, he feared that the narrator kept a padlock of silence of the mental wealth of which he is no share. That means that the boss thinks the narrator is smarter than him, is keeping some tricks away from him, and that's making him jealous. He's got the envy, got the irritated. So that means D is correct, as we said earlier. Okay, 6. The passage indicates that when the narrator began working for Edward Crimsworth, he viewed Crimsworth as a blah 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 blah. Well, actually, we know what to put in this blank already, because the only time we're shown anything about what the narrator thought of his boss at the start is right here, which I actually thought wasn't gonna be mentioned, but anyways, should be a brother. Why? Because the narrator says, "I long ceased," and if you stop regarding someone as a brother, that means at some point you did, right? Because you have to start something to stop it. So here let's write brother. Okay, so we just have to know if his brother boss is Is a harmless rival or not? Well, a boss is not really your rival. Similar to the competition usage here on the SAT, your rival is going to be someone of a relatively equal standing, and this is not the case here, right? Here's a worker and his boss, and of course, they are on the same side, right? Working his boss, there wouldn't be rivals. That make no sense at all, and there's no indication that they're harmless, right? That the boss is a harmless rival. If anything, no matter what you thought at first, this boss is not a good guy. Okay, B, sympathetic ally. So your brother is, in most contexts portrayed to be your friend, and your boss is definitely your ally. Well, typically because you guys are on the same side, you're in the same company, trying to make the most money for the both of you guys, right? So sympathetic ally is actually a very, very good choice here. Maybe a very, 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 very promising choice. Let's keep it open. C, perspective judge. Well, your brother is not really your judge, and your boss is not exactly your judge either. So that really does not make sense, and nor does the perspective part, because your brother and your boss are not your perspective judge. There's no indication of any of these in the passage, right? Okay, how about last choice, demanding mentor? Well, if it's your mentor, then you would have to learn something from your boss, right? And there was no indication of something like that. The boss, does not share any of knowledge with his worker, as stated in the passage for quite a while. The boss is like, oh, you're too smart for me and stuff like that, right? So that means D has to be wrong. So B is the correct answer. Okay, on to, I believe, the last page. Which choice provides the best evidence for the question to prove? Oh, actually, this is very simple. We can see it right here. I had brother, so this is definitely our correct answer. You can go back if you want. I recommend you go back and check all these other ones as well, but it's pretty obvious that D is the correct answer. At the end of the second paragraph, the comparisons of abstract qualities of a lynx and a snake mainly have which effect? Have the effect of what? Let's go back to the end of the second paragraph. So it's right here. We have the snake, which is the boss, and the narrator is known as the lynx. Okay, let's see. Does it contrast to hypothetical courses of action? Well, I wouldn't. Let me think about that a little bit. No, that would not make any sense, because there are no two actions, right? There is just one set of actions, just one kind of altercation between two different things, but there is no two different courses of action. It's more of just one course of action. So A is incorrect. B, convey the ferocity of a resolution. So we gotta have ferocity, and we gotta have a resolution. So over here, there is really no indication of a resolution in any way. Didn't resolve anything, and that means that part of the answer is incorrect, and the whole part has to be wrong as well, right? And ferocity, if anything, the narrator is trying to avoid any kind of ferocious behavior from the boss, right? He doesn't want to get in trouble. He's very observant. He's avoiding trouble, right? So that means B would have to be wrong. Suggesting the likelihood of an altercation. Well, this would kind of look like a promising choice, but there is really no it's not saying that such an action will take place soon, or is likely to happen. It's just something that the author has mentioned that he believes is happening. It's actually quite a daily basis thing. So C actually doesn't make that much sense, and we will have to cross it out. How about D, illustrating the nature of an adversarial relationship? Well, that's quite true, because a snake and the lynx over here, they're like fighting each other, so they're like adversaries, right? So we have that adversary relationship, and that means D would have to be our correct answer. Let me just check my notes here for a second to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah. So, okay, let's go to 9. The passage indicates that after a long day of work, the narrator sometimes found his living quarters to be, okay, so going back home, right, his living quarters, that is in the conclusion paragraph over here, correct? Yes. Let's see. So, living quarter to be treacherous. That doesn't exactly make sense. Like, why would your living quarter be treacherous? There's no one putting like bombs in it or bear traps in it. No indication in the text, at least. So A has to be wrong. How about dreary? Dreary is kind of like a depressive feel, right? And well, yeah, there's no fire, there's no cheering red gleam, right? And cheering, the opposite of cheering is kind of dreary. There's a very disappointing, sad, dreary feeling of the house. There's no fire in it. It is a sad house. Actually, I don't know if it's a house. Probably something smaller, to be honest. So B is incorrect. C, predictable. Oh, wait. I meant B was a prospective answer because, remember that the house has no cheering glow. It is a sad house. C, predictable. Well, some people would like to say that he is predicting right here. He is speculating his fire would be out. But it was out. He was correct in his speculation. But that's not really a correct interpretation. Because if it's predictable, then you wouldn't need to speculate in the first time. You would just know that there would be no gleam, no cherry and red gleam, and because it's predictable. Here it's unpredictable, so that is why that he has to speculate. He could be pretty sure, but it's not always so predictable. He has to check. So that is why C is incorrect. And let us go to the very, very last choice here. D, intolerable. Well, it mentions that your life is intolerable, right? But that really doesn't tell us anything about how his house is. I'm sure there are many people with life that are intolerable but have beautiful houses. There are many examples of, depressed, wealthy people. And on the SAT, we gotta be very critical of these kind of stuff. We have to think of counter examples. We gotta be picky. We gotta be like as if we're treating a riddle, because we're checking to make sure these answers are the only correct answer. And in this case, D, we found a counter example, and it must be wrong, right? There can be no doubt. Because if there is doubt, the SAT would have multiple answers and students will be very, very, very upset and sue the college or something. Okay, now let's take a look at the last question of this test. Well, straight away I noticed that this was the sentence we were on just a while back to find the answer of 9. It is the sentence about cherry red gleam at the very end here. So we know for sure that that is the correct answer, as this one supports this answer directly. So we could already check this. But just for the fun of it, let's look at A, B, and C as well. Okay, A, 17 to 21 starts with IE. 17 to 21. Okay, I should have pent in every side by which my heart. Okay, so this sentence here is talking about. It goes from, I think, here to down here. And this sentence here is talking about Big Ben clothes. And that really has nothing to do with where he lived. Right, I believe, yeah, it has to be talking about his living quarters, right? So this is something that's kind of off topic, and thus it can't offer any support. So we could easily cross out A. Let's look at B, 21 to 23, so right afterwards. 20, what's the last word there? Logins. So from there to here. Okay, so this is talking about his living quarters, yes. The small bedroom at King's Loggings, and that would make it so that we have 2 correct answers, right? Let's see if there are any contradictions. Okay, so it's only after a long day of hard work. That's a very crucial part of that question, because this is just talking about the logging. But here, this part here, that's talking about the logging after a long day of work, right? We see that long day, returning to my logging, that this is the part of the passage that this question is asking us to analyze from. And thus, while this B is talking about the right place, it is talking about the wrong time. And for B to be correct, we know that it has to be the right place and the right time, so it has to be wrong. Let's look at C, 64 to 67. Where is that? Oh, okay, so this is the your life is intolerable part. It's trying to mislead you and connect D with C, because that has intolerable in both of them. But as C is incorrect here, it also has to be incorrect here, right? And in addition, as we said before, this sentence does not talk about his living quarter. It talks about his life. And I don't know about you, but your life is not the same as your house. So let's cross out C. That's a pretty obvious wrong answer if you could pick out why this was wrong at first. So there you go. Correct answer is D, as we discussed before. And that would be it, guys. Hopefully you guys understand some of the thought process I go through as I look at this passage and analyze some of these questions. If you guys want to talk to me about any specific question, feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll be sure to check it out and do my best to answer it. So keep practicing, and hopefully you get that 1600. Thank you.